Hello, I'm Joanne Gallagher, your Think.Future podcast host. I'm joined today by Dr. Carolina Montana Owens from the World Green Building Council to tell us what she has observed over the past year and what's on the radar for 2025. This podcast is brought to you by Arcons, a global leader pioneering solutions and services to the construction and manufacturing industries to support digital transformation for the built environment and smart manufacturing. Visit arcons.world to learn more about how Arcons are helping organizations design, build, and solve through digitalization. From Arcons to you, welcome to our Think Future podcast series. Each week, we'll share conversations with industry leaders from around the world to find out how they're thinking future. Subscribe to Arcons Think Future to access more episodes, interviews, and profiles. Dr. Carolina Montana Owens is the technical lead for sustainable buildings at World Green Building Council. Carolina has a background in civil engineering and a doctorate from the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology in Germany. As a member of the WorldGBC team for the EU Platform on Sustainable Finance, Carolina supports the development of the technical screening criteria for the EU's green taxonomy, as well as the decarbonisation roadmaps part of the Building Life project. Carolina promotes strategies to accelerate the transition to a circular and decarbonised built environment and leads initiatives such as the Circular Buildings Coalition and the WorldGBC Circularity Accelerator Global Programme in partnership with Arcons and other global organisations. Hello Carolina, how are you? Welcome to the programme.
Hi Joanne, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here today in your podcast. So thank you for the invite.
You've got lots of Christmas lights, getting into the spirit of the holiday season, I see. I know that you are an engineer at heart, so can you tell us a little bit about your academic achievements, awards, and what was the journey that took you to the World Green Building Council?
Absolutely. It's been an exciting journey, obviously, for me. So yeah, a little bit about my background. So my background is in civil engineering. I began my studies in Colombia, where I am from. And then during my sophomore year, I got a scholarship to study in Germany. And that's where I got into sustainability and high performance building design. So basically, during my studies, I fell in love with research and innovation because in sustainable building design, there is not a single recipe to follow, but rather many different possibilities to optimize designs with solutions that balance safety and functionality of buildings together with low environmental impact and well-being for users and communities. So I decided to pursue this path and I moved to the UK and I got my master's then and I went back to Germany to get my doctorate. But for me, it was also quite important to combine research with experience and practical solutions. And that's why I also work in between my studies. So I work in Germany for a small, medium manufacturing company. I also work in Tesco in the United Kingdom in the energy and environmental team. And I also work for the Green Building Council in Colombia. In terms of my achievements, I received a couple of awards during my studies from institutions such as the Energy Institute of the United Kingdom. And I was also a representative at the Global Young Scientist Summit in Singapore in 2018. That was very exciting to meet with other women in sustainability and in science. So that was really amazing. And after finishing my doctorate in Germany, I wanted a job that will give me that opportunity to research, but at the same time, teach and connect people and being part of the actions that are having impact on the climate goals. And that's how I joined the World Green Building Council, kind of ticking all the boxes almost 4 years ago.
Seems like the perfect job.
Yes, it has been a very exciting opportunity. And I'm very happy with the team. I mean, WorldGBC is also kind of a family, and we have been able to pursue different topics and different goals. So yeah, it's been very exciting.
So tell us about WorldGBC. Like we all are familiar with a Green Building Council in Australia and different countries like Colombia, but how does the WorldGBC work with all of these local chapters?
Yeah, absolutely. So we define the World Green Building Council as the largest, more influential local, regional, global action network because we are kind of the umbrella organization that gathers together the almost 80 green building councils around the world, but also global corporations as Arcans that are leading sustainable transformation to decarbonize a resilient built environment. So that's why we say that we work a local level, but kind of with a global vision.
And can you just give a bit of background to our listeners about the partnership and how our cons came into the picture along with other organizations and what were a little bit of the history there?
Well, for the World Green Building Council, we have three impact areas where we see that there is need for gathering or joining forces. So the first one is decarbonization, and we had our first global program around like 10 or 12 years ago. Then we saw the need to talk about well-being and users and community. We created a program called Better Places for People. But a couple of years ago, we saw the need to talk about circularity, and that's where we created the program, the global program called Circularity Accelerator. So to give you a little bit of background of what happens. So yes, when I joined the World Green Building Council, one of my first tasks was to join and support the team because we were representing the EU Platform for Sustainable Finance, and we had the task to develop the screening technical criteria for the circular economy for the built environment. So WorldGBC was leading that group of experts, and we were giving the recommendations to the European Commission. So when we were gathering all the information and the different expertise and tools, we realized that circularity itself was sort of a word that was being used out there, but people really didn't understand what we meant about using circular economy in the built environment. So we realized, for instance, that many people kind of connected circularity with waste management. But for us, it was a lot more than that. So at the World Green Building Council, we saw the need to create this global program and bring in all the expertise around the world and put in a single place the different definitions, frameworks, strategies that were being used in the built environment. And that's what we did when we created the Circular Built Environment Playbook. And our different green building councils, but also our corporate partners were key to bring that expertise, but create this framework and this playbook that is being used for several stakeholders.
So since the playbook was created, wasn't that an achievement in 2023? And it has had at least 500,000 downloads. Do you know what the latest count is?
Nope. I think that probably is around 700. But to be honest, once we had the publication out there, what was the next achievement is that it opened the doors for other opportunities. So the playbook is there for everybody to use, but we had the opportunity to disseminate that content to different scenarios. So we have been able to show the main findings in the conference. We created training materials for the green building councils, for partners, and we are now developing what we call deep dives. So some of those topics there require a little bit more of going into what exactly we mean by that and what the different regions could use. So we are focusing on some of them and creating position papers or fact sheets so that our green building councils and partners can reach out different other stakeholders and perhaps also policymakers.
And the other publication that came out with the partnership was the Water Resilience Guidance document. Can you say a few words about that and how that's being used so far?
Our publication, Building a Water Resilient Future for Everyone, Everywhere, was another of the big success for the global program because we saw the need to raise awareness on the water crisis and also the connection between water and decarbonization. So our sector uses a great amount of water in the different phases, but sometimes we don't measure and sometimes we don't realize that to produce or to bring that water to the different buildings, it requires a lot of energy and a lot of carbon emissions. So we wanted to have another publication where we brought the expertise of different partners and of course our green building councils, and also so that they could use this to reach out to the different networks and raise awareness.
So in a recent conversation with World Green Building Council, you were explaining the history and how you intersect with the local green building councils. And it was interesting to me to hear that Norway was one of the first councils that initiated a sort of a roadmap process. Could you tell us a bit more about that? Because we're going to talk about it later, but I just want to set the scene for the background there.
Yes, absolutely. So our green building councils, depending on the different contexts, they have seen the needs to develop different types of strategies to accelerate the transition to sustainability and decarbonization. So, for instance, one of the founders of the World Green Building Council is the U.S. Green Building Council. They created LEED years ago, decades ago. And we have also another set of leaders, Germany, the Green Building Council in Germany, they created TGMB. In Norway, what they saw was the need to bring together the expertise and the leadership of the private sector. And that's when they saw the opportunity to put forward this roadmap. And that opened an amazing door because then the European regional network saw that these kind of roadmaps were a perfect connection between the public sector and the private sector. So the next, if I'm not wrong, the next Green Building Council that wanted to develop a roadmap was the Polish Green Building Council. And as I was mentioning, then the other green building councils wanted to do the same thing. So we had the opportunity with the WorldGBC to bring the network together, and we got funding for this amazing program that is called Building Life. So with Building Life, we created 10 national green building counts, 10 national roadmaps, and a single European decarbonization roadmap that is guiding policy to decarbonize the built environment.
Amazing momentum is building and it even got more traction, it seems, this year at COP. So we'll go into that in a minute. But before we do that, could you explain this initiative called the Buildings Breakthrough and when did that start?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Buildings Breakthrough, in my opinion, is one of the main international achievements for the built environment in the last few years. The Buildings Breakthrough is a global platform designed to foster deeper collaboration between national governments in a bid to make near zero emission and resilient buildings the new normal by 2030. And I think this is huge because since its launch during COP28 in 2023, it has mobilized a lot of actions, but also investments to green buildings. So this initiative was led by France and the Kingdom of Morocco, but has been endorsed by around 30 countries, which shows that the Buildings Breakthrough represents a critical moment where national governments are collaborating together to recognize the role of buildings as climate action and as a climate solution. And for us, for the World Green Building Council, that represents a great achievement and, of course, an opportunity as well, because we have been given a crucial role in the lead of the priority action number 1, which is focusing on standards and certifications. So the World Green Building Council is working together with other organizations. So, for instance, the Global Alliance for Building and Construction, the Global ABC, and a group of experts consisting of other national green building councils, key international organizations, and governments to develop a consensus in defining the common principles for those near zero emission and resilient buildings. So next year is going to be huge because we have to deliver on that. And we would like to present that in the next COP in Brazil. So it's going to be a crucial moment where we will need everybody to come on board, partners and green building councils, and bring their expertise and highlight their leadership in building or creating those buildings that are zero emissions if possible and resilient.
So going back to the sustainability challenge, for the built environment, the statistics say that this sector is responsible for 37% of waste, or is it emissions? Can you explain that so that we can put the net zero definition and these words we're using in context of the sustainability challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. So our sector is generating close to 40% of greenhouse gas emissions around the world. So different regions have similar percentages, so some about 37%. But the other challenge is about the materials that we use, which is around 40%, also depending on the region, and the amount of raw materials that we use, which is around like 40 to 50%, depending on the region as well. So we have the challenge to decarbonize the built environment, but also to be more efficient in terms of resources and circularity, because the circularity rate is right now 7%. So we are discarding more than 90% of what we are using.
That is alarming. So circularity and economy and all of that is very much tied to this initiative, Buildings Breakthrough. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll be back to the conversation in just a minute. In the meantime, here's a little bit more about Arcons. Arcons has a mission to advance the efficiency, quality and profitability of project outcomes for its customers. Providing best-in-class technology augmented by its in-house developed IP and a full suite of professional services, Arcons is trusted by over 40,000 customers globally. If you are looking for a digitalization and sustainability-focused partner to help you achieve your goals, join the thousands of construction and manufacturing customers globally who choose Arcons as their digitalization partner. With more than 50 locations around the world, Arcons can connect you to the right technologies and expertise, so you can improve your competitive position and increase profitability. Arcons has an industry expert to help you navigate the best pathway forward wherever you are on your digitalization and sustainability journey. Visit arcons.world to find out more. And now back to our conversation. So the key concepts and definitions for the industry, do you have some clarification on what, like common language, common concepts that we can all use across architecture, engineering, construction, manufacturing?
Well, I think we are working on that. So what we want to have is common principles for resilience and decarbonized buildings. So different countries and different regions use different metrics. And we think that that's absolutely fine. And they use different certification systems or different regulation. And that's fine as long as we can, agree on what is it that the pace that we need and the path that we need to fully decarbonize the built environment. So it's going to be more about principles that are non-negotiable for achieving those buildings.
Yes, because principles give you enough creativity. As long as you're not adding to the systematic increase of pressure on the natural system, you can create any kind of solution you want, right?
Exactly. Because, sometimes definitions could be restrictive. But when we're talking about definitions, we're giving guidelines in general for different sectors, for the private sector, for designers, for policymakers. So this is what we try to achieve.
So everyone can have an approach to, bridging the gap to sustainability. So what sort of innovations have you seen as far as sustainability and resilience in particular in the last year?
Well, if I may, I'm going to talk about innovations in circularity, which is the topic I am more familiar with. And maybe here I will take the opportunity to talk about two of our main initiatives and work streams that we have contributed to. So one is the EU taxonomy. So for the EU taxonomy, we had the task to develop the technical screening criteria to categorize projects that will make a substantial contribution to the circular economy. And I'm not going to mention all the indicators, but I want to mention that the key qualitative indicators involve the use of electronic tools to describe the characteristics of the building, to have more information on how a building is built, but also including materials and the components that are being used for the purpose of maintenance, recovering, reuse, but also to include and improve concepts of circular design, such as adaptability and deconstruction. So for me, that has been a key milestone because that has increased awareness and education on such electronic tools. And there has been a lot of advances in modeling and optimization. So these are tools that have been around for years, but they keep evolving and getting faster and more robust, and they are increasing interoperability and also the capacity to integrate different systems and components of the building. Not to mention, like every time we need to add more information to those systems and models. So we need, for instance, to include data sets to model future scenarios of climate local conditions. And we also need to start or to keep adding the requirements and restrictions from regulations and from certification systems. So in general, these tools have been evolving very fast, and we have the opportunity to keep adding more boundary conditions to our models.
So digital twins along with AI is all where this is all happening. Is that what you mean?
Yes, exactly. And I think that's where the innovation is coming in the next few years, because we keep having the need to optimize designs, and we are seeing that it's very easy to now find those trade-offs and easily go to the decisions where a design is better for certain local conditions comparing with others. So yeah, AI is going to be key in the next few years, I believe.
And hopefully it addresses different scales as well, right? So you have local community scale, city scales, and AI and digitalization. It's possible to do all of that, although you still need to engage with local people because they have that special knowledge of the region and the land and the history, of how it responds to stress.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. That is going to be a great use and innovation as well. Like if you have certain generic designs of buildings, but we need to optimize them depending on the local conditions, then we can do that very easily in the next few years when we can just, sort of transport digitally a building and see how can we optimize the design based on the future conditions.
Exactly. So when we go into the technology development, WorldGBC was thinking about having a carbon calculator. Is that right?
Well, yeah, not exactly the World Green Building Council, but we are supporting regional projects that are working into that. So, for instance, in Europe, we have a project that is called Indicate, where they are looking into platforms to harmonize whole life carbon data for the region. So, in Europe, each of the countries are developing their own regulations around whole life carbon. So France and Denmark have been the first ones that are putting some regulations into embodied carbon, which we have seen for the first time. But that requires, of course, more data about buildings and about materials. And we are also in need of life cycle analysis. And now there is the need for, or the wish to have life cycle analysis that are dynamic. So in order to improve those processes, we need different platforms and that are harmonizing the different standards that are out there. And that's what these kind of projects that we're supporting, like Indicate, are trying to do.
So that seems very logical for new buildings that you start from scratch. You'd have a life cycle assessment, whole life carbon story from start to finish. But what about buildings that already exist? What's this plan for retrofitting existing buildings, and how does that work with the tools, digitalization, etc.?
Well, it kind of begins the same way. So when we have an existing building, the first step is to analyze the current performance, and that's why we use our electronic tools. Yes, to kind of to see where the building is, what's the current performance, and in the different systems. So in terms of the envelope, in terms of the energy consumption, in terms of the indoor environmental quality, and of course, structure as well. And while there is this analysis, then we can see what type of retrofit is needed. So depending on how old the building or how well the structure is, we might need a deep retrofit, or we might need some just touch depending on the needs for the building. So there are very easy measures that can be taken to retrofit and to upgrade a building. Like, for instance, just replacing lighting from the current lighting to LEDs, and that have a huge performance on the energy consumption. But there are others that might need, for instance, insulation or upgrade of the HVAC system. So it depends a lot on what type of building we are analyzing and where it is and what's the current performance.
So for a strategic approach to an asset owner, they could start with the easy, low-hanging fruit, change out the lights, save electricity, save bills, and roll that savings into the next upgrade, and then so on and so forth. So eventually, over 2-3 years, they might make big progress. Is that a way to do it, or do you have another approach that you would recommend?
No, absolutely. But what I always recommend is to build that digital twin, right? To analyze the performance and to check what is going to be the performance on the next few years. So when we are modeling a building, we try to use data sets of the future climate scenarios. And depending on the location, we might use, for instance, the hottest summer, so the worst conditions in the summer. And based on that, we need to see if the building is going to be resilient, which means if it's going to have a good response in the next decade. So yes, I will begin by analyzing the design, because it might be that it requires a deeper retrofit and maybe changing the lighting when there is a need for changing the electrical system first, then it can be counterproductive. So first, always go to analyze the design as deep as possible.
What are some of the challenges then, if someone wants to do that and the digitalization tool, there's a cost to that, right? It's an investment. Do you have any suggestions about how to overcome that initial, there is some resistance in the market to going that way. So how would you overcome that? Do you have any thoughts around that? Where to start?
Yes, I think that the cost could be higher when there is no the capacity to undertake that analysis. So my first recommendation will be to go to the experts, and I think it's totally worth to have that first investment into the digital analysis of a building rather than go ahead and try to upgrade the building without really seeing the need for that. And I think that is something that is going to improve in the next few years, because more and more professionals are seeing the opportunities there and are upskilling themselves to get more familiar with the new software and the new versions of BIM. As I was saying, these software are evolving very fast, and every time we see that they are adding more information and more capabilities to those tools. There are many professionals, and the designers are getting very familiar with these tools, and it's going to be easier to find that expertise, which at the end of the day is going to decrease the cost.
Maybe we can talk about roadmaps now, and what are the main steps on the roadmap?
Yes. So as I was mentioning, Building Life was a very successful program, and that's why we're trying to replicate it in different regions. So we Building Life, where we created or we supported green building councils, around 10, to develop the roadmaps. We saw that opened the doors to connect with other sectors. So connect with the public sector, with the governments that were updating the regulations, but also with professionals, so with architects and with designers that were looking into how to take action to accelerate decarbonization. And we want to replicate that in the other regions, because in Asia Pacific and in the Americas, there is a great appetite to see how those roadmaps, so to having clear guidance on how to decarbonize the built environment and how to connect with other sectors. So I was mentioning governments and policymakers usually go to the national green building councils and are asking for guidance on how to do that and how to do it in a very efficient way. So reducing costs, but also at a good pace. And that comes because with the commitments of the climate change, governments need to put forward the national determined contributions, or the NDCs. And this is where they see the need to go to have those clear guidance.
So at COP29 in Baku. WorldGBC was well represented this year and some exciting conversations happened. Can you tell us some of the highlights and how that affects the built environment sector?
Yes, so this year COP was focused on finance. So there were a lot of conversations and negotiations on how to mobilize funding. So in that sense, I think there are great commitments that we're seeing that they are going to be, or there's going to be a mobilization to green buildings. But I think for us, what is key is it has been around the conversations of the buildings breakthrough. So there are many governments and many organizations that want to be part of the conversations and be part of the commitments. So having those initial conversations about the principles, about what resilient buildings means and how we can mobilize more investment and more ESG frameworks to support this type of buildings, I think that has been the key for this COP.
And going into next year's COP, what are World Green Building Council focusing on now?
So next year, yes, 2025, we are marking the 5 years to go to the first set of commitments around our climate goals. So we want to have, if possible, more roadmaps, so more clear guidance on how to decarbonize the built environment. But I think we're going to start quantifying the real impact of those roadmaps. So how much are we reducing the carbon emissions of the building sector? And I think for us, it's going to be a big year in terms of delivering the commitments that we have done with the buildings breakthrough.
And so there was a little bit of a strategy shift recently. Can you explain how that's evolving and what are the main focus areas of the World Green Building Strategy now?
Yes, for us, for the World Green Building Council, I think it's been a year where we have seen the successes of the previous work, but now it's time to focus on the impact. And that's why we wanted to focus on two main work streams. So one is the prioritization of roadmaps, where we want more countries to develop those. But also we want to tackle current knowledge gaps that we have seen, or different topics where we see that there is an opportunity to highlight leadership and to scale those solutions into different regions. So that's why we have identified initially 5 topics where we want to work with our network and our partners, Green Building Councils and partners, to really give guidance on how to scale up solutions. And in those topics, we are talking about retrofit, nature-based solutions, resilience, of course, and also electrification and just transition. So this is what is going to be our focus of the next year.
There's a lot of work to do. It's very exciting. So as we close out today's conversation, when you think future, Carolina, about the possibilities for 2025, what excites you the most?
I think our work together. So something that has been key in our partnership with Arcans and with the other corporate partners has been about bringing together expertise of different actors. So bringing together experts from the academia and from the design world and for architects, it has been key to deliver all our main publications and achievements. So I'm very excited about delivering it on those 5 topics that I just mentioned next year.
Great. Well, on behalf of myself and all my colleagues at Arcans, we just want to say thank you for this wonderful opportunity to work together. We've enjoyed the journey so far with you and Katrina and all your team. I wish you a very happy holiday and a Merry Christmas.
Thank you, John.
Talk to you soon. This podcast was brought to you by Arcans. Arcans is leading the digital transformation of the construction and manufacturing industries, providing best-in-class technology solutions from world-leading partners and their own in-house development software from the Arcans B-Smart portfolio for building, infrastructure and manufacturing, and a full suite of professional services. Arcans is a company that cares about creating and building a better world. Together we are working with industry and environmental experts, providing forums and platforms through our Arcans Think community to create conversations that matter to our future generations. We invite you to join in the conversation and participate in our Think community. Like and subscribe to our Think Future newsletter to stay up to date with the latest innovations and conversations as we advance the digital journey for construction and manufacturing around the world. You can download our podcasts at ourcons.world or from your favourite podcast platform. From our Cons Think Future, thanks for listening.